it's here. It's officially here. The holiday season. The season of competitive light displays in your neighborhood. The season of, I don't care, I'm going to eat a whole pie. But most importantly, it's the season of excess cardboard. I mean, let's face it, online shopping can result in an entryway that looks like a packaging warehouse. So what do we do with all this cardboard? We upcycle, and we make it into art. 'Cause we are artists, and that is what we do. And we can make some really cool abstract realism and incorporate some cool textures into our painting, just with a little bit of cardboard. So let's get started. So the first thing I do is I really get into it. I manhandle the cardboard. I want to tear it into some organic shapes and get some of that corrugated texture in there. So I fork around with it a little bit. And yeah, once I get the exact corrugation that is desired, the desired effect, then I start kind of piecing together like a puzzle where I want all of my cardboard bits to go on my canvas. Once I have them in the correct geographical position, then I sketch around them so I know exactly where they're going to go, because I'm going to remove them and then start adding some adhesive to the back of the cardboard. I know what you might be thinking. Isn't cardboard super absorbent and won't it buckle? Well, yeah, it will if you put it in water, but what I'm using is a hardener, and I'm using that to adhere it onto the canvas. But not only that, I pretty much saturate the whole entire piece of cardboard with the hardener on both sides, getting into all the little nooks and crannies so that it will harden really well, and then it will be a beautiful paintable surface. So once I have all of my pieces in place, I let it dry completely, which meant pretty much overnight, and look, it dries clear. Pretty cool, right? So then I wanted to add a little bit of texture to the large piece so that it wouldn't just be a really smooth surface. So I added a little bit of modeling paste and a thin layer, and then I went on to the other parts of the canvas that I wanted to add a little texture to. Is there such a thing as too much texture? I think not. No, we want to go overboard. We want to make this into something really cool. So this is the experimental phase, really, where you can just, go ham with it. I think that adding some sand or some rocks or, pretty much anything that you want to, you could add fabric to it if you wanted to. You could add string. And whatever desired effect that you want to accomplish, just mix it with a little bit of gesso and see what happens. You could even use a gel medium if you wanted to, like a clear matte gel medium or a gloss gel medium, and so you could actually see the string. For me, I just wanted to have something that's going to be solid white because I'm going to be adding paint to it. So once I did that, I added gesso to the cardboard as well, so that it will not only seal the cardboard even further, but it will also make it all one color so that I can decide what colors I'm going to put on the canvas later. So I let that completely dry overnight, and then I went into adding my paint. I think the key to really creating some cool effects, especially when you're using texture, is to paint in layers, to get a base color on there and then to start layering other colors on top of it. And depending on the type of thing that you want to do, I suppose if you have an idea in your head going into it, what you want to do, you can kind of base your color scheme on that. For me, I was kind of going for like rusty metal or something that would, I think the corrugated cardboard really kind of drove that home for me a little bit, because it makes me think of metal, of that corrugated metal, and making it rusty, and so I was going with that color scheme. So I was using a lot of kind of like the burnt sienna, the burnt umber, really getting kind of that orangey glow to things. And as you go, you kind of decide what colors you want to add to it to really kind of drive that point home, and making certain parts of it a little darker so that you can see them, and it kind of brings them into greater relief, and you can really see the different levels of the canvas. So using different items such as sea sponges and paint brushes, and then adding other colors to it, but it's a layering process, so I still want to see some of the colors underneath it. So using a lot of transparent paint is actually helpful, because you're not just covering everything up with an opaque and then having to add more paint to it. And play with tools. I think that tools are such a great expressive way to get some of your abstraction and different effects with paint. So rubber brayers, squeegees, you know, a variety of different tools will help you to get different effects. And I really like using them in conjunction with each other because you can, you know, create a lot of different textures with the paint itself, and it happens really organically. It's almost like the less control you have, the more interesting your painting turns out to be. So I do love painting a lot of detail, don't get me wrong. Like, I love to paint portraits and really emphasize a lot of detail and everything, but sometimes I can get really burnt out on just painting detailed portraits, and sometimes you just gotta kind of let paint fly and drip and see where it goes. And I like having kind of the combination of the two, where the background is a really free-flowing, intuitive process, and then adding detail to it later. Because I do sometimes feel like the intuitive process is the catalyst or the inspiration for the representational art that I then add to the painting. And that's actually really cool, because it's almost like the painting is talking to me and telling me what it wants to become, which is exactly what happened during this process. I knew that I wanted to have a larger piece of cardboard on there, but I wasn't really sure what I was going to put onto that piece of cardboard. And what I ended up doing was doing a portrait, and because I do love painting portraits, so I freehanded some facial features onto this kind of larger piece of what I consider to be like a copper patina, and then I started to add some of the details to the face. And I'm using just acrylics for this whole entire process. I'm actually using the same exact palette colors that I used in the background to create the portrait, and then just starting to add some of the details and some of the shadows. And eventually I was just really going into it with like this really cool intuitive process. And the great thing about doing something like this is that it's all really original. There's no reference photos that are used in this, and you're just kind of going with your imagination. So even though the facial features might not be perfect, it still gets the point across of what it is that you're looking at. It's still a face. It may not be a perfectly proportioned face. The nose might be a little bit off, or some things might be a little bit wonky, but once you have the light and shadow on there, it's going to give it enough depth and dimension that it's going to make it look enough like a face. And that's what I think is really cool, is that all of the details that you put in, you're almost creating something from nothing, which actually, that's exactly what it is. You're creating something from nothing. And all of the features that maybe there's a person that actually looks like this somewhere out in the world. Who knows? But using this kind of intuitive process within the representational work as well is what creates a really unique piece of art. Even if it does look a little post-apocalyptic, it kind of has that appearance to it, but I still really like it. But anyway, guys, if you want to see the full-length video where I kind of go through the process and tell you all of the products that I'm using in full, head over to my Patreon and you can see the whole entire process from start to finish. All right, I love you guys, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.